Hello, this is your host, Michael Cross, here with an hour of Unlock the Door. And I think we're going to have a really good show. And so, for those of you out there that are interested in education in any sense of the word, whether you've got kids in school or whether you're planning on having kids or you've got grandkids, I think you'll find this to be a very interesting show. And first of all, I've got to find out if my connection's working here. Sean, are you there?
I'm here.
Yeah, hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Excellent. All right. Sean is going to talk to us tonight about the topic of homeschooling. And so we're going to do this in such a way that I'm going to let her pretty much call the shots because she's the expert on this. And so we'll just kind of start out and we'll see where this takes us. Anyway, Sean, good afternoon and welcome to the show. Can you hear me?
Okay, you're cutting out a little bit, but I'm happy to be here and to talk about this subject, which is near and dear to my heart.
Okay, well, first of all, let's just ask, how many kids do you have?
I have 8 children ranging in ages from 10 to 21.
All right. Congratulations on that. Well, I noticed your picture. You're in pretty good shape, and I just wanted to say that I interviewed a mother of 9 the other day who's a fitness instructor, and I guess if people keep themselves in shape and eat right, you're not eating any of that GMO corn, I guess.
I'm trying to stay away from that, but you're absolutely right. I don't think we should blame our figures on our kids too much. I think it's pretty much what we do and what we put into our bodies because we're made to have children. So, but anyway, thank you.
Ooh, that sounds pretty subversive in today's society.
It does.
Yeah, how times have changed in the last couple decades. Now, I'm just going to say this. I've known homeschoolers. So I know a little bit about the subject, but I'm going to let you explain it from your perspective. Now, I have known people who are fundamentalists. I have known Mormons, evangelicals, Jews. And, I've even known people that are Wiccans and pagans and New Agers. You see, I'm from Oregon, okay? So that kind of, you can't get away with not knowing these people. But many of these people homeschool. And so I'm just going to say, how many people out there do you think in America and Oregon and so forth, you're from Oregon too, homeschool?
Well, there's about 53 million kids, school-age kids in the United States right now, and only 3% of them some form of homeschool or another, but that is about 2 million children. So although it's a small percentage, it's a significant amount of kids involved in home.
Yes. Hello?
Yes. Did you hear my answer?
No. Continue. For some reason, you cut out there.
Okay, well, there's about 53 million kids school-age kids in America right now, and 3% of them are homeschooled. So that's about 2 million.
Okay. Well, that's a significant number, actually. So,
it is.
3 million is the size of a lot of countries. So, how did you start homeschooling?
Well, when I was young, my parents had my brothers and sisters and I school until we moved to Oregon. At that point, Mom put us in a public school while she was trying to get settled and my dad reestablished in his medical career. But she wasn't real happy with this little trial, and so she tried a local private school, but the cost just got to be too much, and my mom started homeschooling. Now, I was in high school at the time, and honestly, I was really relieved that I didn't have to do homeschool because this was 30 years ago, and homeschooling, at least in Springfield, Oregon, was virtually unheard of. But then about 15 years later, I was getting to be close to school age. And of course, with one child, private school was an option. But At the time, he had 4 younger siblings, and we knew that there was no way we were going to be able to afford private school for what would eventually become 8 children. So my husband and I thought about it. We thought, well, our goal for raising our kids was to raise, responsible, capable, compassionate, stood up for what was right. And so we thought, well, what's the best way to do that? And without, coming across the wrong way, I honestly feel like parents are the best influence on their children. And so my husband and I made a decision that we would teach them the principles that we felt were important. We really feel that 18 years our kids are in our home goes by quickly. I know it doesn't always seem this way when you're in the thick of it, but it does go by quickly. It's a brief time to fill our kids' minds with what we believe in, what we think is good, what our encouragement, our guidance. And I also figured at this point my child was entering first grade, and I figured I could handle first grade, and then would take it from there. So that's what got us started.
Okay, that's that must have felt really challenging at first.
Well, the thought of I graduated with a degree in English, but I never wanted to be a teacher. I did not take a teaching degree. And so the thought of suddenly becoming a teacher to, my own children, it was intimidating. But like I said, I figured, well, I've already learned what he's supposed to learn in first. I'll take it year by year, see how it goes. And then for sure, I won't do it in high school. That's what I had intended to do. Now, things did evolve, and we can talk about that more as we go on. But, I started, it was one step at a time. And I thought, I can handle first grade. And I could.
Okay, so your kids, this child at first grade was probably learning how to read pretty fast then.
Well, actually, he was not a super fast learner. And teaching a child, as any parent knows, no matter how you educate your child, it can be a very time-consuming process. But I did find that having the time, not in between my child coming home from school and me making dinner to teach him, but to take any time during the day when we were both in the right mood and the frame of mind, a real blessing.
Okay. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking, and that is the socialization aspect. So they're sitting back thinking, okay, I can see this, but in their mental image is someone living way out in the middle of nowhere, like, I don't know, La Grande, Oregon, out in the desert or something. And their little home that's isolated from everyone, and they've got their kid at the dinner table. And they're thinking, well, this kid's never going to learn how to socialize with other people. He's going to be like a really awkward person who can't relate to other people. And how would you answer that?
Well, you're right. That socialization fear is a big obstacle to kids and parents. Because our kids protest to the contrary. Most of them want to be just like their peers. They want to dress like them. They want to have the same, phone or iPod or whatever. They want to have the same privileges. They don't want to stand out and be different. And homeschooling, it really does scream, I am different for most kids. And if mainstream fitting in is essential for you, then maybe homeschooling isn't what you want to do. However, if you listen to some of the things that I've experienced and my thoughts on this, I think you'll see that this does not have to be an insurmountable barrier, because teaching our kids social skills it's really a parent's job. It's not the school's job. There are tons of opportunities and activities that allow them socialization. If, for example, they have brothers and sisters, right there, they're getting socialized with both males and females. If they happen to be an only child, they can be involved in a homeschool group. They can be involved in extracurricular activities, either through your local school or with other, music lessons or dance lessons. So I really think that social skills are much, much more than being able to integrate into a classroom. And I think that true social skills are taught by example, by explanation, and that kids need to be taught manners. They need to be taught how to be interested in others, to learn how to hold conversations and to problem solve, which, by the way, are good research and writing topics for those homeschooled kids. And kids who are interesting and interested in others can make friends. That's really, I've never found that to be a problem. And unfortunately, there are kids who have only been in public school who don't have social skills.
Well, yeah, and okay.
No, go ahead.
Okay,
Go ahead.
Are you still there?
Yes.
Okay, good. I was just going to cut in for a moment and just say that, when we talk about socialization, the thing that pops into my mind is, for instance, if we think about what kids are doing today, you're saying 3% are being homeschooled, and that means 97% are either most of them are in the public schools. Some are in private schools, but most are in public. And then there's an average. I saw that the average kid in America today spends 6 hours per day watching TV. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's where a lot of kids are. If people want to talk about socialization, let's talk about what the TV is teaching them. Just turn on some of these children's networks and you see what this is what they're being taught. This is how they're being socialized. And then they go to school. I wrote about this in a lot in my first novel, Freedom from Conscience, Melanie's Journey. And it's about this girl she's kind of lost when she goes into school, and because there's all these artificial social groups that for some strange reason exist in almost every school in the United States. And I don't know how it winds up that way, but the same social groups in every single school. And of course, it's a psychological thriller, and if people are interested, they should look it up. But the thing is that there's a lot of kids that I don't see that socialization is in a positive way is what's being promoted in the United States. And if it's TV in school with a few minutes with their parents each day, that just seems, you see what you'll get. And turn on any of the specials about spring break in Fort Lauderdale or someplace like that. That's what occurs. They're not rebels. They are conforming to what American society is saying they should be.
Right.
And everyone's shocked, like, oh my gosh, aren't they going to wear any clothes up there? And you're thinking, well, this is what they're taught. This is what they're watching this on music videos, and they're seeing people that base their lives on their clothes, the styles on the children's networks. But you're saying then that in a homeschool environment, the parents are more in charge, but it seems like they also have to be very much 100% committed to their kids and not just thinking, oh, well, the school will teach you that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Now, the thing is, some of the people out there listening might go, well, I'm hardly a perfect parent. I'm not always the best influence on my kids. But when you think about it, think about your child's school, if they're in school. I think there are many wonderful teachers. And so I have had my kids at various times in public school. But you cannot choose your teacher, at least where I come in our town. You cannot. Of course, you can't choose the kids in the class. So you have very little you have no influence on what your child is being taught in the class. You don't have influence on what the kids are bringing into the school as far as language and attitudes. Whereas even the least perfect parent is looking out for the best interest of that child they love so much. And all of us as parents, we are honestly the best influence on our kids. We have a sense of the standards, the principles that we want our kids to be raised with, to pass those along than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in 99% of the cases now, there's always the 1% where people will see something on the news about a neglectful or abusive parent. But yeah, I think you're right. 99% of parents, they're not just having a kid just to have a kid. They're doing it to they want the best for that child. That's who they're interested in the most. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's our nature. That this is our blood. This is our bloodline. We're going to want to make sure that this kid gets exactly what they need to make it. Now, of course, there's some people, they may think that the goal is that all their kids become doctors. And others are going to think, well, I want to just broaden my child's horizons. And there's others that, they're going to be artists, and they're wanting their kids to be artists. And that gets me into the idea of style. What style do you use? And you can take as much time as you want here, because this is really fascinating, because this gives us a glimpse into homeschooling. What style do you use to teach kids? And what styles have you seen? Like just give me a few examples of different ways that seem to work, but still are just different.
Okay. And I just want to last topic. It's not the worst thing in the world if your child doesn't always, quote, fit in. Eventually they're going to go off to work. They're going to go off to college. They're going to be out of their comfort zone. And why does that need to be the first time? If our kids are sometimes out of their comfort zone, have to learn to put themselves out to make a friend, it's hardly the worst thing in the world. And I think so much of their attitude about it is influenced by their parents. If we express confidence that they can do it, that will translate and rub off onto them. But I don't think it's the worst thing in the world if they aren't the most popular, have, a friend on every block. But let me go on then to the diverse styles of homeschooling. There's been a huge shift towards education alternatives that I've seen just in the 14 years that I've been homeschooling. When my two oldest, 20 and 21, were homeschooled, they stood out. And in their minds, it wasn't in a good way at the time. But now my 10 and 12-year-olds, they associate with kids who go to school part-time, homeschool in an RV while touring the country. They're involved in homeschool groups, and kids who go to public school. Kids out there doing alternative education things. I think when you first start out with homeschooling, it helps to have somewhat of a routine and a schedule. That may or may not evolve, and some people just stick with that routine and schedule because that works well for them. We have multiple children doing homeschool, and we've found that some of them like to start early and they want to get it done. Some start later. And I love that flexibility because some people are more morning people and some aren't. And I don't think that's necessarily a sin or some just the way it is. And homeschool allows that variety and allows kids to work at their best time. Some homeschool curriculums are faith or culture based. Some are non-schooling where there's really no real structure. It's just let the kid kind of pursue what he or she is interested and go from there. There's also homeschooling programs that are integrated with the public schools, and we can talk about more that as we talk about, preparing for college. And then, of course, some people do a 3-day homeschool week. Some do a school week. Each family is able to really find something that works for them because there are so many resources from curriculums that a parent may come up with. You can find many curriculums on the internet. Some cost, some are free. There are just tons of resources out there for just about any style or culture or faith that you want to pursue.
Well, do you have a specific one that maybe a listener could go to? I mean, if you just name it, and then they could check that out. So you don't...
Oh yeah, the one that we've last couple of years is called Robinson Curriculum, and you can find it at RobinsonCurriculum.com. And what I really like about it is the focus is on reading and math. And what I like about that is that one of the goals my husband and I have is that we want our kids to know how to learn and to love to learn. And I really feel that reading and communication is a huge part of that, because if a child can read well, and not just read well, but understand or comprehend what he's reading, then it doesn't matter what he or she is reading. Whether or a biology manual, if they can read and understand it and then communicate what they're reading, then they can do just about anything. And so our focus with the Robinson curriculum is just that. Now, we have tried others, and we've had varying degrees of success, and each child is a little different. I have some kids who love the program we're using now, and I have one who doesn't like it as much because it's very independent oriented, and the kids are encouraged to work on their own, and she's more one who likes to kind of be coaxed along. So as parents who are homeschooling will, I'm sure, understand what I'm saying here, and those who are looking into it, you find that you massage what you're doing a little bit, you tweak here and there, and maybe you start over and try something new.
I like what you said about teaching the child to love to learn. I mean, how many people they may be involved, like in public school, they may be involved in sports and PE and stuff, and their focus is on that particular sport or getting a grade in physical education. And then when they get out of school, they don't have that structure anymore that was external, that was saying, now you need to do this. And at least if I look at statistics for the United States, most just never have any kind of what you would call a fitness program. So they never were taught. They may have been in great shape in high school. And then you see them on, a 10-year reunion, and they look like, they spend all day at McDonald's and Walmart. And I don't know if it's, maybe our technique in America, the whole, step by step by step by step. You will do this, 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 and this. Someone tells you, okay, now we're going to go out and run. And, you go out and run your 4 or 5 laps around the track, and then you stop. And, you get a certain amount of points for that. And then, but there's no, effort to get the person to think, now you're in charge of your body, and now you can go out here and do something. Now, yeah, there are exceptions. There's always, in every school, there's the teachers who are going to infect you with their enthusiasm. But then there's the ones that don't. By the way, going back to my book, that was, a major subplot was, the difference between one teacher and another, and the effect that, and so forth. Again, it's a psychological thriller, so there's a lot of violence in this. But anyway, the thing is, it seems then that if you take into account the child, you can make it to where they enjoy the topic, whether it's math, science, history, or whatever. Maybe they're interested in different aspects than a textbook at school would say, you have to be interested in this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree. With what you said, because so much of their day is regimented according to what someone, several levels up has determined is the best way to teach every child. There's very little independent thinking that goes on just in the whole day, as far as going from one class to lunch to recess to whatever they're doing. There's basically, once they leave the house until they come home, they don't have to think a whole lot about how their day is going to go. And that can happen in homeschool too, when you have a schedule, and that's not necessarily bad. But like you said, if they don't learn to kind of organize their time on their own and plan ahead, and or allowed to engage a little longer in something that really interests them. That's something I really like about homeschool, is that we don't necessarily say, you have 45 minutes to finish your math assignment. Now, we might, if I have someone who's dawdling or, having a hard time, I might say, look, you need to get this done. It's not all just, roses and candy all day long when you homeschool. However, if I have someone who's like, oh, I'm reading, reading a book and they're really enjoying it, or they're working on a writing assignment and they want to do some more research, go for it. I'm all for that. And I like that I can say, sure, just do that. And it's not delaying, it doesn't mean they're going to miss something else. They can do it. They can engage for as long as they need to or want to. And then also, they also do know a certain amount of things that, at least in the curriculum we do, there's things they need to accomplish each day, but they can adjust their day to get it done when it works for them.
I'm just going to throw this in. I got a psychologist that's she's accepted to be on the show. And she wrote an article about how America differs. It was an article in Psychology Today about how America differs from France in reference to what they call ADHD. Where in America, it's like, okay, the 5-year-old can't sit still in the classroom. Of course, then again, how many teachers could sit still in a classroom for an hour or two, being instructed? But the solution in America seems to be, oh, well, here's a whole bunch of different drugs we have that we can give you. And whereas in France, only a very, very tiny percentage of their children are put on any kind of drugs when they're in school. They try to find why the kid is anxious or not able to concentrate. And they try to find why the kid, or what can they do as an intervention to help the child develop skills of concentration and so forth. And so, I saw a documentary a while back where a French couple had moved to the United States, and they were shocked when their 8-year-old was suddenly diagnosed with attention deficit disorder. And they're like, what are you talking about? My child is a child, and in France, he's just a regular kid. No one would say this. And yeah, I mean, it seems like we're so much into the idea that we want kids to sit still in their seats, which are often those horrible plastic seats I remember back, in the American schools. And concentrate on whatever the teacher has chosen as the topic. And if they go off topic, then the teacher's job is to get them back on topic, even though the topic might be related to what they're studying. Mm-hmm. And with homeschooling, at least, you can integrate things, it seems. I mean, some kids really love biology, and some love chemistry. Ultimately, they can intersect each other, but I've seen where people can play around with the curriculum and help their kids.
Oh yeah, I agree. It does seem like the public schools want the kids to all be kind of cookie cutter copies, and that rubs off on parents. And when parents see their kids being a little different, I think Americans especially are all too eager to run off and get a prescription to help their kid be just like he's theoretically supposed to be, which is a different topic, I know, but I think who they are, and of course they need know when it's time to pay attention, but they don't necessarily have to be like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you can tailor, it seems, the lesson, and kind of a Montessori style, I guess.
Definitely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We might be able to come back to that here in a little while, but how does homeschooling help? I mean, what kind of activities can you do to supplement the educational process? I knew one person she had 4 kids, and she was homeschooling them, and she was involved in some political issues, and she was constantly taking the kids up to Salem. And she even, at one point, I think her 13-year-old testified, in one of those hearings where they asked for the public to give their opinions.
Yep.
And, I mean, do you do this kind of stuff? And tell me some of the other stuff you do. I mean, don't worry that people don't know where maybe
Right.
the Mount Hood is or something like that. But what do you do?
Well, one thing we did this last fall during the election season was there were some candidates we were following, and when they would speak locally, we would go and listen to their speeches. And, I had a 9-year-old and two 11-year-olds and a 14-year-old. So they were, on the young side to go listen to a candidate speak. But what we did beforehand was prepare a few questions that they could ask if they had the opportunity, and they really engaged. They really enjoyed doing that, much more than I thought they would, because they, having learned a little bit about the candidate, having prepared some questions, it was a great learning experience. It forced them to get out of their comfort zone and talk to an adult they didn't know, and actually get feedback. So that was great. We've done things as simple as going to the beach, going to the Oregon coast, or going up to the zoo. Sometimes we'll bike over to there's a local river called Mary's River, and we'll go swimming, if the weather permits. But we don't on extravagant field trips, but I would say every couple of weeks we go do something that we like to do. Old Hill, which is in our town, or like I said,
Let me see. See if I can get this on. I'll try this way.
Are you there?
Yes, I'm there.
Okay, I cut out at some point. Where did you lose me?
I lost you when you said you were taking your kids to Mary's River.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, basically we do something, things along those lines every few weeks, and just kind of depends on the season and what's going on in our local community.
Okay. So essentially then, this means that if as a parent you wanted your kids to see how milk is produced, at any time, if you wanted to, you could take the kids to a farm and observe this. Or if okay, sorry about that. Or if you want to do some sort of a botany trip, you could take them to the desert or to the mountains and collect samples. And because I remember some of the things I remember in high school, when I went to high school, was my advanced biology field trip out to Smith Rock, and things like that. And but I learned a lot doing that.
Right. And I think sometimes hands-on learning is more valuable than theoretical learning, and I do think memorization is very valuable in some areas, but I think it's way more beneficial to the kids to go grocery shopping with me and try to figure out the best prices we can get the most for our money than memorizing the different continents and countries of the United States, which is something they can look up anytime. But a hands-on going to the grocery store, which is the best price for apples and meat or whatever, I think that's more valuable and more practical. So we integrate things like that the kids enjoy, I enjoy, and it has a good outcome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems like you have everything available. I mean, one of the things I want to throw out is do you get together with other homeschoolers so the kids do have interaction with not only different families of diverse backgrounds, but also different ages. Obviously, in school, with your brothers and sisters, you're all different ages. But with other people, do you have some sort of organization or some sort of system by which, if you are going to go out to that theoretical dairy farm, down in Cottage Grove or something like that, that a group of you go?
We do. Now I've generally tended to be fairly autonomous, and just with. It's been simpler to keep it at home. However, this last year we got involved with a group in Corvallis, Oregon. There's quite a few homeschoolers in our area, and what they do is it's a supplement to our own homeschooling, and they offer different classes each quarter, anything from maybe putting on a play to studying the history of math, or it could be anything. And we've taken advantage of quarters this last year, and the kids, they get to go hang out with other kids doing something like a play. They really get to know the other children, and so we do that on occasion. We don't do it on a regular basis, but lots of people do, and there are a handful of different homeschool organizations just in our area, depending on the kind of thing you're looking for. And I'm sure that in most small to medium-sized or communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, I was just looking at the whole idea that school is the only place that you're going to be segregated according to the neighborhood you live in and your birthday.
Yep.
Nowhere else. I mean, if you work in the real world, you're going to be working with people 20, 30 years older, younger than you.
Right. And in college, you could be with kids or adults, various ages.
Yeah. Have you known of many homeschoolers that, because, this is a continuous learning, I mean, I guess you learn during the summer too, that go into college maybe when they're, 16 or 17, or get college credit while doing homeschooling?
Oh, definitely. What is nice about, and I can't speak for Oregon, flexible with homeschoolers and very accommodating. And I don't know the reason for that, but I appreciate it. And through our, like the high schools in our area, you can get college credit from local community colleges for free. And you could actually, you do this generally either on campus or online. And you can, if your student is dedicated and motivated, you can college as a sophomore or junior. You can get up to 2 years of credit for free if you'd like. Now, of course, there are other things. You can skip the whole degree, high school degree, prepare for your SAT or your ACT if you plan on going on to college, and you can focus on that area. There's also, and you can, you don't have to depend on taking those AP classes and then taking the test anymore to get college credit. You can do it. You can pay per credit, university, anywhere, and get college credit. They're just, most colleges today,
you're cutting out a little bit.
Okay. Most colleges know what homeschooling is, and they're very accommodating. You don't have to have a high school degree or a GED. If you pass the test, you can get into college. They'll accept your college credits that you've earned in high school. So yeah, you can start college your junior year if you want through the schools, or you can do it earlier if your child is ready. Now, you got to be careful because it's the child who wants living their dream through their child, or being able to say, my kid started college at 14. It takes a child with some drive and who's motivated and wants this as much as maybe mom and dad.
Yeah, I have to say this. I had a son. Well, I still do have a son, but but when he was really young, he learned how to read, and when he was in first grade, he was reading 6th and 7th grade materials with no problem. Mm-hmm. And we had requested, because he knew everything in the 1st grade. He knew it all because, I'd helped him with some learning and stuff, and he had a very strong environment in that. And the thing was that we asked that he be bumped a year, because most of the time when he was outside, he played with the older kids too. I mean, he had more in common with the older kids, so we wanted him bumped a year. And you'll love this: the administrators at that school refused to do it, and they actually said, "Well, we've kind of found that your son is too competitive." And I was just going, what? And is that a bad thing? But in their mindset, these school administrators, I mean, maybe some of these are, when I think of school administrators, I think of a kid, having a lollipop that looks, like it could be used as a weapon, and suddenly gets, 5 years old, gets suspended from school for 10 days. Or, I mean, these horror stories all over the place. A kid holds hands and gets suspended for 10 days for sexual harassment. I mean, they can't.
Right.
Our schools are like, whoa, they're more like prisons in some ways. Now, not all schools, not all. I just, I don't want to make a blanket statement, but it seems that too many are. And, and you can't have a lot of flexibility. But the one thing I want to touch into is, I read this thing. It was kind of interesting. It was talking about. I'm interested in future trends, and this article was making predictions for the future in reference to inventions and things that would be disappearing. I think they predicted the last written book on paper would be made around 2035.
Okay.
Because we're going more and more electronic. More and more people are buying books off, and reading them on iPads and so forth. And I know that, like, if in much of Europe now, many classes don't even have textbooks, because they assume the students can look up this information on their iPads or their computers, and things change. I mean, it takes 3 years to write a textbook, and then it takes maybe a couple of years for it to be reviewed before it gets published, and by that time, things have really changed. I mean, most textbooks in probably Oregon even were written during the Bush administration. And so, at least on a social science basis, they're going to be way out of date. And so, do you as a homeschooler, are you able to use technology in a much more flexible way than the traditional school?
Oh, absolutely. And this kind of ties in with what your son, homeschoolers on average are generally, about a year ahead of their public school peers. But there is a great resistance in the public school system to, for example, to allow a child who has been homeschooled to skip a grade. And I was inquiring about this, and was told that, well, your child can skip a grade if he's skipping along with the seventh. It was a 6th grade situation. If he does the 6th grade work along with the 7th grade work, and that's obviously a little bit overwhelming to an 11, 12-year-old. But their reasoning was that if they skip students, then they're missing out on a year of funding, because that child is going to graduate early. And so their motivation is not necessarily what it may seem. They want to keep the kids with their peers, bringing them. But along with that technology, in the public school system, one child may be able to maybe much more advanced in an area, but that usually they don't have the means or the the funding or whatever to take that child and really help him or her progress as they would like to. At home, you can do this. You can do it for their books. We load their books on their Kindles. They read at their own pace. If one kid reads more than the other, that's fine. If the other one doesn't quite get there, they do, they look up, they use their dictionaries on their, one daughter has an iPod and she looks up her stuff on her dictionary. Another one has some kind of a pad and she looks up her stuff on there. And it's so quick. It's so efficient. I'm here able to monitor it. So, if they decide they're going to watch something else, then, I'm there to say, nope, let's get back on task. But yeah, they're learning. My 10-year-old knows how to use all these devices. Now, honestly, that's not a big concern of mine. I know these kids learn these things quickly, but I love that they can use what's out there, their dictionaries, they find books, they find answers to their questions on these wonderful little gadgets. And kids at the public school don't have those resources. A lot of computers, and I know they're getting more things, but it's not what you can do. It's not quite the same because, for one thing, they're not being monitored. You don't have necessarily someone who's close at hand them with their individual issue. And so, yes, it's wonderful to be able to take advantage of all that technology is offering. And I'm sure we don't even touch on a lot of it, but we do use it and have found it to be great.
Excellent, because it seems like you're teaching more for the future, because some of the other stuff, it seems to me that the educational model that America is still based on, I'll say this, the Nordic countries in Europe and other countries are getting away from this. They're trying to get more into independent learning, teaching kids how to analyze. Oh, well, before I get into that next question, the one difference I've often seen with, let's say, Swedish kids and American is Americans know more facts in like math, science, and stuff like that. If they're taking those courses, but they often have a hard time analyzing and using the information. Like if I say, explain to me photosynthesis. American kids are very good at explaining photosynthesis. If on the other hand, if I were to ask them, knowing what you know about photosynthesis, would it be possible to use this concept to maybe make alternative energy? Mm-hmm. That's when you get that kind of look like, huh?
Right.
Whereas if I were to ask many European students of the same age, Northern European students of the same age, that same question, they might start saying, okay, well, let's take a look at this. And, and without going into a science lesson, they might be able to apply that in an analytical form. Whereas Americans, usually it's college when you start learning that you have to analyze.
Absolutely. And that's what I was referring to when I was talking about memorization versus figuring it out, looking it up, making it work. But
I lost you there for a sec.
Oh, well, just referring to the fact that I think that's why it's so important, not just to memorize the facts, but to learn how to figure it out, to find it, to know where the resources are that you can figure something out. So what was your question going to be?
Well, essentially then we're looking to the future, and to be honest, the assembly line model that the American school system is based on, the factories aren't there anymore. The robots are going to be doing these jobs. Robots will be doing these jobs. They're being outsourced to countries that, they don't have any labor laws or anything and work people for 10 cents an hour and so forth. And entrepreneurship, knowing how to do things on your own and make a plan, is going to be more and more and more vital. Now, you see, entrepreneurship, I don't know if that's really even taught unless you take some sort of business ed course in a college.
Right.
And is this something you think that homeschoolers do more often than? Well, any would be more often, but do you see this?
I do. The homeschoolers that we associate with really want their kids to be independent thinkers, independent learners, to get outside of the box, so to speak, and to try new things. And when I think of independent learner, or I think of that as someone who's takes what they hear, takes what they read, maybe what they study, what they've been told, then they reason it out and come up with their own conclusions. And I definitely don't think that at school. But there could be a variety of reasons for that. But I know that it is encouraged in our home and in the homes of many I know who homeschool, because, yeah, sure, I want my child to, I'm trying to raise him or her with my standards, with my beliefs, but I also want him to understand why he's doing or believing something. I don't want him to just take it on necessarily just because his mom or dad told him, because that's not always going to be good enough. He's going to challenge that. And that's good. That's fine. But I want him to be able to look at the facts, look at his own set of beliefs, and analyze it. And I didn't learn how to analyze till I was in college or later, like you said. That just didn't come up in high school. That didn't, there was no need. And there is a need, and we a lot of homeschoolers integrate that into their philosophies, I believe.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I think we can all remember those horror stories when we were taking a history class and the history teacher asked some question on a test like, what year was George Washington born?
Right, and who cares? You can look it up if you need to know. Just Google it.
Yeah, well, nowadays, you can just Google it. Why waste the mental energy of knowing what year he was born if what you're teaching are the reasons for the Revolutionary War? I mean, it's just, I think it's just something that's just carried on through the years.
Exactly.
Kinds of questions and that don't mean anything versus, I mean, I want my kid, if they're taking a history class, to understand, for instance, you could give them a question like, why did France help the United States in its war with Britain? That's the kind of thing I want them to be able to go through and give the reasons, and so forth. Not name the ship that Lafayette sailed in, to help the colonists. I mean, that's not important.
Right. And there's so many ways to teach history or whatever in an interesting, engaging way. I mean, my son read a book about the history of George Washington, and it was, he learned so much, and way more than he would have. And I know another son did do it at public school. And when they were discussing George Washington, my son, who'd read the book on him, not a textbook, but a book, knew all sorts of more valuable facts than the son who had, done the school class. They're just ways to engage them and teach them without memorizing unimportant things that they can look up anytime.
Yeah. I mean, I'd much rather someone learn the basics of how to get information, how to put it together, and how to reason about it. And that doesn't mean you just don't have to worry about, well, who was George Washington or who was Thomas Jefferson.
Of course not. Right.
But at least know, what motivated them and that sort of thing. Now, we just have a few minutes left, and I'm going to ask you that, since maybe we do have someone that's out there in America. I live where you can't homeschool, and I mean, that's just the way it is. But you're in an area where you can homeschool, and this hypothetical listener who's out there listening going, this is interesting, and maybe I'll consider it. The last thing I want you to tell me is, do you think this ties families together better?
Absolutely. I've seen my own children, kids get along with their siblings for the most part, but I've seen my kids become best friends. I've seen, the interaction, the amount of time that I get to spend with my kids, whether I'm sitting at the table with them doing it or doing my own, making dinner or, folding laundry, whatever I might be doing. the presence of each other, the glances, the comments, the eating a lunch together, they're invaluable. And it's hard to calculate. I don't know what the end result is of that necessarily, but I know I feel like it's a strong relationship. I feel like we do know each other, and it's not basis. Now, I have a couple kids in school right now, and I have some at home. And the one, I have a senior about to graduate, and I rarely see him, and so it makes me more appreciative of the kids I do have at home. And now that I've realized I do have a high schooler I'm homeschooling, and I have come to realize over the years that I can homeschool a high schooler. I'm realizing, I can have even more time with these kids. I don't have to send them off to school when they're in high school necessarily. So I really enjoy just the regular interaction. I remember, I know people who dread spring break and who dread the holidays because they have to keep their kids entertained. I don't have that feeling at all because it's not a break where they have nothing to do. They're used to being at home. They're used to finding things to do. And it's not a stress when there's it's not like that at all when you homeschool, at least in my experience. It's been a really bonding experience for us.
Okay, so essentially lots of good positive things there. And you're not like, I saw something with DHS was trying to connect homeschoolers to terrorism and stuff like this. And I don't, you don't know any, people, gearing up for some sort of weird action or anything.
No, I do not.
Yeah, so I think if people know more about homeschoolers and stuff like that, they'll realize that they come in every shape, size, color, religion, and so forth.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, Well, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking time out and sharing with us here on Unlock the Door. And, maybe you never know who might get influenced by this.